Hey guys, welcome to season 15 of the 15-ish minute coffee chat, a conversation providing tips for every entrepreneur and business owner.
So, what do military families, corporate teams, and community leaders all have in common? How about the need for not soft skills, but power skills? Those core transferable abilities like communication, empathy, and leadership that drive meaningful impact. In this episode of the 15-ish minute coffee chat, Anna and Selena are going to sit down with Rachelle Chapman, director of the Adecco Group U.S. Foundation. With more than 20 years of experience in workforce development and relationship strategy, Rachelle is going to share how power skills, also often labeled as soft skills, are actually the foundation of effective leadership, deeper collaboration, and long-term professional success.
Hi.
Hi, Selena.
Very excited for today's conversation.
Well,
When you mentioned that power and the soft, I loved that you said Rachelle had kind of flip-flopped those words because I think it makes such a difference and people take you more serious a little bit, right?
Well, yeah, I think sometimes we forget how powerful those soft skills actually are, right? And how important they are to everything that we're doing. I mean, they make us a better leader, they make us a better communicator, they make us a better employee, they make us a better partner. All the things that we do in life, these soft power skills are actually a huge part of being an effective person in that area. So I'm excited about it too, because mine have been like on the down low today, and I need some powering up of these power skills.
So we have the right guest on today. She's going to be like kind of motivating us and lots of questions, lots of stuff. So, okay, what's our call to action question? We love to ask our audience.
Yes, we do. Okay, so our call to action question today is going to be which power skill has made the biggest difference in your work? Empathy, communication, adaptability, or something else? And you can put anything you want, but wherever you're listening right now, whatever you're doing, if you are able to, drop that in the comments and just let us know. And Selena and I will get back to you and let you know if, I don't know what we're going to get back to you on. We're just going to say that's awesome. And we're glad it's showing up.
We're going to comment back. Look, you guys, it really has been kind of a day. And as you know, the date on this recording is May 13th. And I've had kind of a doozy, right? And when I went to go change my calendar out, now I know why, because it's the 13th. So the only good thing about my day today is that we get to talk to Rachelle. So I'm kind of glad she's breaking that number 13 curse of whichever today. So I get it, Anna. I think today is going to have to be empathy. I really feel like that is going to make the biggest difference in my work today. So
I feel like empathy and adaptability. I mean, if we're throwing those three that we named on that question out there, like communication, empathy, and adaptability, your adaptability has already had to come into play for you today. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
right.
I didn't want it to, but it did. So okay, I wanna bring up Rachelle's bio so we can kind of get, we made a joke with her earlier that we are not on the 15 side of it. We're more on the ish side. So let me really quickly read a little bit about Rachelle, who is the senior director, and we want to send a big congratulations because this is a new she has leveled up, guys. So she is the senior director of the Adecco Group U.S. Foundation and a seasoned workforce development leader with over 20 years of experience in corporate stewardship, nonprofit strategy, and relationship building. Her work spans military family advocacy, community leadership, and national partnerships focused on economic empowerment. So I don't know about you guys, but I feel like this is like the perfect person to talk to us about different types of skills, and today being the power skill, aka soft. So we want to welcome on. I'm going to bring our guest on right now, and ta-da!
Hello, ladies. Hello.
Welcome to our show, and thank you so much for putting up with us. You heard how the day is gone, and I apologize. You're going to have to carry the show.
It's my pleasure, Selena. Good to see you again, Anna.
You as well, Rachelle. We're so excited to have you on today. So, just so everybody who's listening knows, this started because I had actually done a different podcast with Rachelle for some transition work that I do with military spouses and their families. And Rachelle, I don't even remember if it was during the podcast or in our conversation outside of it, but you said the word power skills, and I fell in love with it so much. And I said, will you please come on and be my guest on the 15-ish minutes so we could talk about power skills?
Yeah. Yes, Rachelle, no joke. She did call. She goes, I have a guest. I'm bringing her on. I just, this is what we're talking about. I was like, ooh, I really, really dig that. So, welcome.
I know, I dig it too. Just the word itself is so empowering, like very take back, I love it too.
Yes. And I think that's what I loved about it the most is when Anna had said that. And I was like, you know what? I love that because I hate the connotation that soft skills presents to people when I'm like, no, they still matter. They are still integral to kind of, the impact of a team, right? So, okay, I know we'd go all day long on just that, but let's take our coffee cup selfie with you, Rachelle, so we can put you in the hot seat and start talking all things power skills. So on 3, our imaginary photographer is going to snap a picture. So on 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. Okay. I know it's fun. We love it. Okay. So we are going to, let's go like this, I think.
Oh, there we go.
And then, Anna, let's bring up the first question so we can chit chat.
Yeah, let's bring up the first question. All right, so today we're talking about leveraging your power skills with Rachelle Chapman. And our first question is, well, what exactly are power skills, Rachelle? And how are they different from soft skills, which we've already dug into just a tiny bit, but we're going to make it really clear for everyone listening.
So I think the best way to make this clear is to say that soft skills got a rebrand, you all. They are no longer known as soft, as Selena was kind of alluding to. There's nothing soft about soft skills. They are power skills. And something that's interesting that I actually learned recently about this is that, and this was surprising to me, I think it will be for you all, the term soft skills was actually coined by the military, which is probably the least soft organization that you can possibly think of or conjure up in your mind. And really what they are those intangible human-centric skills that are required for leadership and certainly required for entrepreneurship. And I think what the military found, not I think, I know what they found over years and years of research is that the most successful team leaders weren't the most technically savvy team leaders. They were the leaders that had exceptional power skills. If you ever watch Shark Tank, or either one of you ever watched that program with your kids on your own? Yeah. My kids love this show. I love it too. How many times have you seen one of the sharks say that they are choosing to invest or not invest with an entrepreneur because of the person? Like, yes, you have to have a good idea. Yes, it has to be an idea that makes money. But 9 times out of 10, and Barbara does this all the time, is she says, I'm investing in you because I like you, because I tell you have what it takes. She's talking about the power skills. Maybe she hasn't necessarily used that term, but they are such a strong predictor of success. And I think one thing that came to me, Anna, when you and I were talking about this before, and this is something that I coach specifically in the military spouse community, based on feedback I've heard from companies that I've worked with over the last 20 years here at the Adecco Group, is so often military spouses don't understand or maybe aren't properly articulating the value they bring to the workplace. And a lot of the value they bring are these power skills. And so when I start talking to them about, do you realize that you are a project manager at home? Do you realize that you do budget forecasting, each and every day? Do you understand that you are doing change management, a big buzzword in corporate America? And so often they say no, because it's not unique. It's common. Their neighbors and their friends to their right and to their left, everybody's resizing their life every few years when we move with the military. So they don't see it as unique, but I'm, with a big yellow highlighter saying you are unique and you are different. This is what sets you apart. And it's very specifically lists of power skills that make you so successful at being able to restart your life over and over. So often what I do is teach them kind of how to understand those power skills, name them and claim them. I say name it and claim it so that you can present that, especially if they're, hiring for a job. And to kind of crystallize this a little bit more, and I'm going to do it a little bit differently later, but power skills tend to show up in like 3 broad categories, or at least this is how it's been explained to me. One of those categories is like your gravitas kind of traits. So things like confidence. How confident are you, and how does confident project? Decisiveness. Are you wishy-washy, or can you, choose between A and B? One of the best things I ever did when I got married was I had a small wedding. It was what is it called? Not a remote wedding, but one where people have to travel to it in a small location, a
destination wedding.
Destination wedding. I had flower shop A and I had flower shop B. I didn't have a lot of choices. I was forced to be decisive, and I got things done and planned a wedding in 8 weeks. Also inclusiveness. I think we hear a lot about the importance of inclusiveness today, and that shows up as a really important top trait in that gravitas kind of category. The second category of power skills traits are communication traits. So how well do you do at speaking? How well do you command a room or Zoom? So many of us are doing this, like, how well are you commanding a room or Zoom call? And then also your aptitude to listen for real learning, not listening to necessarily take your turn to speak next, but how are you able to demonstrate active listening in a very caring way? And the last, which may or may not surprise you, is appearance as a power skill. Being polished, definitely still important in all the ways, but the most important appearance skill in the 3 categories of power skills is actually authenticity. How authentic are you showing up at work, in your personal relationships? People can tell, you all, they can tell when you're not being authentic. And the more you lean into kind of, I know we use the word vulnerability a lot. Brene Brown has really taught us the importance of being vulnerable, even at work. But the more that you lean into that, especially our younger generations, the more they appreciate that, and the more that they feel like they can show up as their authentic, real selves at work. So that was a very long answer, ladies. I'm sorry.
No, I love that so much. I want to just really quickly touch on appearance for a second, because you brought something up for me. My grandmother was a flight attendant for Hawaiian Airlines back in the 40s, right? Mm-hmm. And they're big. We all know how the flight attendants back in those days, they had to be polished. They had to always put their best foot forward. And my grandmother, until she passed last year, always at 95 had lipstick on, eyeshadow. She says it's always important to put your best foot forward, right? And it wasn't like a vain or vanity thing. It was just always present yourself in a way so you don't get looked over because they think you don't have the power skills.
It's so true, Selena. When you look at the 3 things that is required to be promoted, especially for women at work today, it's performance, exposure, and image. And oftentimes people will say, when I ask the question, how much do you think performance, your ability to get promoted is dependent upon your performance versus exposure or image, almost everybody gets it wrong. It's actually the smallest piece of the pie. The biggest piece of the pie being exposure. And second to that is actually image. And physically, that certainly is important in how well you get pulled together. And we kind of take a dip in image in terms of our expectation of it during COVID, when everybody was, wearing sweatpants and things like that. And it was comfy, and we were, depressed, and we were down. And so we kind of use it as an excuse. And then I saw my friends at work actually lean into that a little bit too long. And I had really courageous conversations with them, like, you need to get out of the sweatshirt. And like, even if you're going to, have a party from the waist down, you got to be professional from the waist up, because it really does matter. And, oh, by the way, you can tell I feel passionate about this. When you're working remotely, for those of you listening today, and you're working from home, it matters even more, I would argue, because you're not getting the FaceTime with the boss. You're not getting the FaceTime with executive leaders. If you're the entrepreneur and you are the leader, people that are working for you, you're setting an example for everybody that works for you. So this is kind of it. This is your moneymaker. Like, you've got to show up. You don't have to necessarily have makeup on and your hair, show up as your authentic self for sure. But like, don't show up maybe as your Saturday morning self. Show up like you were going into the office. You guys are laughing, but you know what I mean.
I feel so called out right now.
I say it in love.
But I think, there's something to be said for that, right, Rachelle? And like, my grandmother and I have had talks like this, right, where some of our family, like, it's just grandma being vain. I'm like, no, it helps bring confidence, I think, also to yourself. So when you are in that room and you're commanding it, like you say, right, sometimes that image of you coming in at your best really helps kind of create a stronger conversation, confidence, right? And so I just always do think about that, and I'm always like, I can't show up as my Sunday morning girl. I just can't do it,
I have to say though, let me take that just a step further. We went to Selena and I were at a conference in February up in Dallas, and we had this, I don't even know, this funny little man that gave this presentation, and one of the things he talked about was image, and he was talking about how the first impression, people always talk about the first impression. He said, but what makes you memorable is the second impression. He's like, everybody gets a first impression, but whether or not they're going to want a second impression, right? And where that second impression takes you is going to make a huge difference in how successful you are. And I thought that was so interesting, because just that concept of that authenticity really does need to pervade long term. It can't be just I have FaceTime, so I'm going to be this way, because ultimately you can't stand that way forever. And you'll get found out, and then you're a fraud, and then there's a big problem, right?
100%.
Yeah, Rachelle. Yeah, he said, if you don't make a better second impression than the first, they are going to know you are a fraud.
Yeah. Well, it's also exhausting. Like, when you don't show up as your real self, do you know what I mean? That is, and it might be like temporarily exhausting for me to put on makeup and straighten my hair and and things like that. But I mean, 2 points. Long term, I think it's worth it, because for me, and I think even if sometimes we don't want to say this out loud, I think we think it in our brains and feel it in our hearts. When we look good and feel good, we perform well. It just kind of goes with the territory. But this fake it till you make it, or pretend to be something that you're not in that initial whatever interaction, meet cute that you have with somebody, that is what's exhausting, to have to feel like you keep up. Like, so just come as you are, come as your best version of yourself, certainly, but definitely come as you are. Yeah. And the phony baloney stuff is like, I don't have time for that. I'm not interested in small conversation. I'm that annoying person that's like, tell me, I want to know your soul. I want to know, I want to get in there. You know what I mean? Like, dig around and like peel back all the layers. And yeah, I don't do surfacey, phony stuff very well. Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, Rachelle, you're my kind of girl. I can't wait.
I was just going to say, you and Selena are going to have so much fun talking.
Right. And be like, did you know Rachelle in 1994 did this?
Yeah.
Like, that's what's going to happen. So, yeah, I love those kind of conversations too. I think you really learn more about somebody when you, like, just say, oh, what's your coffee drink? You know what I mean? Yes. That's a first question, but right?
Yes. We didn't talk about this I'm getting excited and then I'm interrupting you, and that's a bad.
No, you're fine.
That's not a power skill, you all. Don't do as I say, not as I do. But one of the things I didn't mention, and I think that this should be couched as a power skill, is the importance of relationship building. To your point, Selena, you know what I mean? When it carries me every day at work, because I don't have a large team and I really have to rely on leading through influence. And it is much easier to lead through influence at work and at home, when you have when you're on solid footing with people at work and you spend time getting to know people and, just past the copy order stuff, but you like really kind of get in there. People in my experience anyway, appreciate it. And it's how I've gotten, so much work done over the years. So relationship building is key at work, in life.
It absolutely is. It's one of the, yeah, absolutely. So okay. So I'm sorry, ladies, but I'm moving us on just a slight little bit, because really what you've done is you've led very nicely into our next question. I want to talk a little bit about servant leadership, right? Mm-hmm. And if you look at servant leadership, I don't know if I would call it a buzzword per se, but they're like, if you're not a servant leader, then you're not a great leader necessarily. Sometimes people will use that as like an epitome of somebody who does have mastery of these power skills that we're talking about. So in your opinion then, Rachelle, tell us, what does it look like to lead through service or be a servant leader? And why does that matter in today's workforce? Why is there so much emphasis placed on that?
Oh gosh. I kind of think about this maybe a little bit as I think I have maybe a 2 or even 3-parter answer to this question. It really bugs me to think of servant leadership as a buzzword, because I really do believe in the authenticity of that word or of that expression. And I've really had the joy and pleasure of working for truly servant leaders. So I have seen in my career firsthand what that looks like. Talk about going back to what we were just talking about in terms of relationship building. I mean, taking care of your people, to me, is the first thing when I think of being a servant leader, in terms of what that looks like and how that plays out at work. And whether that's spending time with people, listening to them. Everybody wants to be seen and heard, and they know when you are looking over your shoulder at the next person standing behind you, or on your calendar, or the next call you have to take. And when they really are doing that active listening to learn that I mentioned earlier, and really caring for you. And that could be, sending somebody a thank you card, or sending somebody a grandma baby shower gift because they're becoming a new grandma, whatever, I don't know, whatever that looks like, helping somebody out with a project, but that other people matter and putting other people first mentality. And I don't necessarily mean in like a martyr kind of way, or, in a severe kind of state where you're putting yourself last. That's not helpful. That's not what I mean. I think there's, and I hate the word balance, but there's kind of a balance to it. But I think when you lead with an others first mentality, kind of everything else kind of takes shape. I also think that leading with kind of that service mentality, at least for me, is a recipe for joy at work. It has been for me personally and professionally. I also think that, and this again, just personal, when I feel the most kind of in that flow state, or the most grounded, when I am in really good connection with other people, when I am really grounded and connected in my faith, and when I am actually doing purposeful work in service of others. And I feel very grateful that I get to do work each and every day that benefits the military community that I love so dearly and I identify with. And I recognize that not everybody gets to do that. And if you're working in a job right now that is not either aligned through your through a purpose that is aligned to your values, find that outside of work if you can. Whether that's giving back in the community where you live and you work, or I love doing volunteer work with my kids. A lot of our colleagues across the Adecco group, we create volunteer opportunities specifically so they can volunteer in their personal time with their families. And also, I just kind of zooming out for a second and talking about servant leadership and how that plays out at work. I think having a real strong, this is kind of a no duh, I suppose, but having a real strong culture is really paramount to producing high performers, whatever that looks like in the workplace. And in my experience, as I kind of was just alluding to, one of the best ways to do that is provide opportunities for our colleagues to give back. Whether they are in jobs where they feel like they're doing something purposeful every day or not, giving them opportunities to be tied to the community where they live and work has been amazing. We led colleagues through like 1,000 volunteer hours last year with Dress for Success, this really wonderful national nonprofit partnership that I lead on behalf of the Adecco group. But whatever your organization, whatever your cause is that's important to you or to your organization, and also let me say, not only give back to the communities where you work and where you live, but doing it in community with others. I love all the research coming out tying longevity to community. We know, like, all those countries where they've got 100-year-olds living. I don't know if you guys saw that Netflix documentary. I think that was last year, the year before, where centenarians are living. But a big component to living a long life is being in community with others. So give back to the community that you're working in. Give back to the people that you're working next to and that you're working beside. All of those, I think, things make for a better leader, and they make for a better culture at work. Again, a long answer, and I'm so sorry.
No, you got to stop apologizing, because
yeah, this is a fantastic answer.
I know, right? And one thing I want to just mention is, you say this is a no duh kind of answer, but honestly, I think it's very difficult for people to put into practice what you're saying. A lot of times I don't think people know how to build a culture that's a give back culture. Either they were raised differently, or maybe they hadn't worked for great leaders, or they didn't, they weren't brought up in an organization where that was a priority. But I think that the focus, maybe in the last decade, maybe longer, I don't really know. I mean, I'm throwing numbers out there like I should have a stat, but I don't. So I'm just going to say, I think that for whatever the time frame is, that shift has happened, and it's become very important to make sure that you're thinking about the people who are working for you, giving to your organization, making sure they're aligned with your mission, and how important that all goes into then what you're talking about, that culture within your organization. But also, if you spread it out, like you said, big picture, now you're talking about within your community and what that looks like, and where are our communities suffering. And there's so much in what you just said. I'm all excited. I'm like, yes, Rachelle, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I saw this big shift. This is not surprising, but I saw when I took over leading our relationship with Dress for Success, we were just coming out of COVID. You guys know what I mean? Like, people started getting back out of their house and stuff. And it was hard. It was hard at first, but then I also was part of the pivot where it was like, oh, dear Lord, get me out of my house. What do you have that I can go to? Where it was like we were pulling teeth to get people to go to luncheons and dinners and show up to volunteer. Then it was like the floodgates opened, and, everybody's dying to do this work. So, we give all of our employees 8 hours of VTO, volunteer time off, to take a day off which is a small amount, but more than other organizations do, I suppose, just to kind of, continue promoting that service kind of mindset, community mindset, and culture in our organization. I think it's one of the most important things any organization can do, and it's awesome for team building.
No, and when you think about the effects too, that doesn't just like even affect your home, but like that person in your organization does a volunteer because you gave them that time. They go home, they tell their children, hey, let's like practice something like this. Or, I mean, the effects are one that you probably don't even see, right? That you guys are part of. And again, it affects the whole community. Now this kid goes to school and says, let's do this. And it came from a servant leadership role that started over here. So, and your impact is great. So I'm so all for that. And I can kudos to you guys for offering something like that, because I've been in a lot of organizations and there is not, it's always like, hey, we're going to do this mandatory volunteer thing. You guys will show up. You know what I mean? And so
instead of working, you're being forced to do this. It's not volunteer. It's actually voluntold, right?
Yes.
But
I always say anything I do at the Adecco group, I always say, I don't take hostages. I only want a coalition of the willing. So if you don't want to, if you are not here willingly, please excuse yourself.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so we're starting to kind of wrap up the conversation a little bit. What you have said today, Rachelle, I think is so powerful in so many different directions. I mean, from the initial conversation about even what power skills are to applying that through servant leadership in our organizations, communities, I mean, our families, every relationship that we really have. So where would you suggest, this is just kind of a, Rachelle, because you're so smart, we're going to place this big burden on you right now to say, where would you tell someone to focus first if they're saying to themselves, I really want to build my leadership skills through these power skills? What do I do? Like, how do I do this? What would you tell them?
So, I always have layered answers for your questions, Anna. But first of all, because I cannot take credit for it, I want to give you a list of, this comes from Professor Hill at Harvard, who studies and teaches on leadership. And so I want to kind of read to you the 8 essential qualities of leadership, because I think what you're going to find is these are also all power skills. And so if you're looking specifically for 8 specific traits to really hone and focus on, these are them. And then I'm going to then maybe suggest how to do it. The first one is adaptability. You guys talked about that at the top of our call today. For military spouses that are watching this, you all have that in spades. The second, you already mentioned also, empathy. Hugely important. By the way, in the multi-generational workforce that we work in today, that's especially important for the youngest generation. So empathy. This is very similar, I think, to adaptability, but how comfortable are you with ambiguity? I mentioned earlier that change management is kind of a buzzword in HR, and really not even just in HR, but in all organizations. How comfortable are you when things change on a dime? And they do all the time. Creativity. How creative and nimble are you in your thinking? Resilience, another power word that we use to describe military spouses. Authenticity, which we already talked about. One of my favorites, curiosity. And last is analytical prowess. So are we using our creative thinking brains as leaders to show up as the best leaders that we can be? So those are the 8 that she cites as the most powerful leadership traits or qualities that one can possess. Again, they all sound like power skills to me. I talked about 2 things today or 3 things today that resonate with me the most. And that is doing whatever it is, whether it's service, and just doing life with other people in community, to me is the most important thing. I think a lot of your listeners, me, myself included, maybe the 2 of you, we talk a lot about confidence. And one thing that confidence needs is permission to exist. And the safest place to get that permission is in community with other people. And curiosity then affirms that confidence, and you get that again from your community. So confidence, community, and curiosity. You are all here today in community. Keep doing this. Keep showing up with each other. Keep learning from these 2 wonderful ladies. Keep learning, from anyone in this space. But that would be my suggestion. Keep learning.
That was a mic drop of an answer. I mean, and you guys, when we talk with our guests backstage before we start, like one of the things we had chatted with Rachelle, like, I don't know if I can talk that long about this stuff, but I feel like we could absolutely continue this conversation and learn even more. And, I joke that I came in as like an old new mil spouse because I married my husband at 40. And so I had already established a career. And so I learned this civilian life, and I learned this military life, and it's very interesting taking from 2 different worlds. And so everything you say today, Rachelle, also applies to this like single mom that I was, that was just the power skills that a woman could have. And I really, really appreciated everything you said today. I'm like, I'm walking so much better than I did before I came into the conversation, because it's very validating. And I think this is why I love the shift of words from soft to power, like Anna and I mentioned, like we chatted earlier. There's just so much that you talk about today that it's like, these are things we know, but I think people don't know how to put a name to something, and you're kind of helping do that today, you know?
Well, and I think we gloss over these so easily. Oh, I'm adaptable. Yeah, whatever. And we don't give it the true value of what it deserves and how we are able to, what that really means to our lives, right? Oh, yeah, I'm a curious person, whatever. No big deal. You know, sorry I asked so many questions, right? But the reality is like you were talking about relationship building skills and the importance of networking and really building those foundations of community, you know, everywhere you go. And you're going to live a longer life. I mean, you heard Rachelle say it today, right? Go watch the Centenarians, or I can't remember the name of it either, but whatever it is.
Blue zones. It was like people living in blue zones. Yeah.
There you go. Go watch that show. And what she said is true. It was all about like their community that they lived in and how involved they were with other people and how strong of a foundation they have. And it really came down to the power skills that allowed them to build that beautiful life that they were living. So
I want to say one more thing, and maybe this is a no-brainer too, but I think it's worth repeating, especially for any young person that's listening. You know, AI is changing every few months, and where we will be with the advent of AI a year from today is going to look very different. 2026 is going to explode with AI. And at least as of right now and in the foreseeable future, it is not going to replace these power skills. It is not going to replace the necessary human skills in terms of how we communicate and how we interact with each other. So go to school, get all the certification, the education, the technical training, for absolutely keep doing that. These are skills that are not replaceable unless we all turn into robots and cease to exist. They will be a necessary way that we will survive and maybe even outsmart AI. So they're here to stay.
I love that.
I do too. We're gonna have to come back this time next year with Rachelle. Hey, Rachelle, remember when you said this last year on our show?
I was just going to do that, Anna. I was your robot self.
Rachelle's robot is like, she's at the beach enjoying life. Like, how can we help you today?
It is sad. I brought like a 90s, 40s robot in. I'm like, hello. Like, I can't. Versus the 2025 robot, which is very different.
We know what you meant.
Yeah. I guess, well, I think it's that time we share a toolkit. And we always ask our guests, like, hey, what's something that, you know, people should have kind of in their entrepreneurial bag? And so we're going to have Rachelle tell you a little bit about this book. She's very excited about it, and so are we. So take it away, Rachelle.
So this book actually comes out today. I know the podcast will be live. So once this is actually live, you all will, it will definitely be out. But a friend of mine, Elmina Altai, just published this book today on May 13th, The Ambition Trap. I think this is going to resonate with a lot of entrepreneurs specifically, and certainly some points in here with the military spouse community. She talks about the importance of pursuing ambition out of a place of healthy purpose. And so not being ambitious for ambitious sake and driving yourself to a point of unwellness, or in her case, she was on the verge of was working so hard, she was on the verge of death. But actually really understanding, and I love this concept, and we don't have time to talk about it today, maybe it's in another podcast, but tapping into your zone of genius. And that really resonated with me with the military spouse community, understanding the difference between your zone of genius and your zone of excellence, and making sure that you are leveraging and understanding what's your magic and your secret sauce. And oftentimes what our magic and what our secret sauce is innate. And so we don't think of it as genius because it comes so naturally. We don't have to work at it. We're like, I was born that way. Instead we go to school and we build a business and we hustle and we put in our 10,000 hours and we're exhausted. And we're not even tapping into and leveraging the things that make us magical and great and unique and genius. And so she teaches you how to do that. And without stealing too much from the book, one of the best ways to do that, community, go back to your friends, ask them what your zone of genius is. Selena, tell Anna, Anna, tell Selena, what is it that makes you unique? What is your zone of genius? Talk to 3 people, compare notes. Fantastic read. Love her to death. She's amazing. I wish her all the best.
Oh my gosh. So first of all, we already are going to book you for the next show for the that you just described. So you guys can't wait to see Rachelle in season 6. So, and I love that. I am actually very fascinated. I mean, what a coincidence that it comes out today. So guess what's going on the show. So congratulations to Amina for the release of the book.
Super proud of her.
So tell everybody also, let me just shift this along to the next slide here. Where's the best way to continue a conversation with you?
So probably the best way right now is to reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can see my social handle there on LinkedIn. The other websites and Facebook or social media handles on there are to follow us on the foundation. So if you want to look at any of the work we're doing to support the military spouse and veteran community, certainly do follow us there. But if you want to connect with me personally, do it on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Our favorite place, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, Rachelle, this is where Anna takes over. I put on a little bit of Oscar music because I could kind of talk. But thank you so much. I'm really glad that we were able to speak to you today.
Likewise.
And I know that there's so much value to somebody listening that thinks, because you gave them permission today is what you did. And I love that. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Rachelle, just for my part, I just want to say I think we're going to see a few less COVID sweatshirts around here today. We're going to see a lot more power skills in action. We're going to see a lot of change happening. Hopefully we'll see some servant leadership. I hope we inspire some people to get out in their community and really look at the ways that they can give back. And with that, we want to say thank you so much for being our guest on today's 15-ish minute coffee chat. For everybody out there listening, Selena and I also like to hang out on LinkedIn. So when you're connecting with Rachelle, if you're not connected with us, we wanted one of those connection requests coming in. As always, you can find us also at annandselena.com, on any of the Facebook, Instagram places as well. And then on your favorite podcast platform for the 15-ish minute coffee chat. Please like, subscribe, and follow. And we'll see you at the next one. We'll see you at the next one. Thank you, Rachelle, for coming. We'll talk to y'all later.
Thanks, Rachelle.
See you.